Hello, everybody, and welcome to the event today. My name is Kai, and I'm a member of the social media fleet here at Mysterious Galaxy. And today we are celebrating the release of In a Garden Burning Gold by Rory Power. Yay! So fun! Okay, so Rory Power is the New York Times bestseller of Wilder Girls, Burn Our Bodies Down, and Long Year. Oh, and also, here's the lovely cover of the book. Isn't it beautiful?
Oh, I should have
I love
one.
it.
That's like
Oh, yes.
my
Pull
whole
out all your
thing.
fun things.
Yay!
Yay! Yes. And so that's who we're celebrating today, this wonderful book. And in conversation with her today is Heather Walter, also an amazing author of her book Malice, with a sequel, MISRULE, coming out in May. So just some pre-event reminders. You guys can click and buy the book on that green tab right there that should be under our faces. And you could get signed book plates from Rory herself. And so that's really excited. Thank you, Rory, for doing that.
I put them in the mail. They
Please
should be here
remember,
soon.
yes. And please remember that your purchase of books through Mysterious Galaxy helps us as an indie bookstore to keep doing wonderful events such as this. And Rory and Heather will be doing an audience Q&A around a 30-minute mark, so be sure to submit all of your questions to the Ask a Question tab below. And so I know you're not here to watch me talk, so I'm going to disappear in just a moment. And so without further ado, please welcome Rory Power and Heather Walter.
Thank you so much for having us. It is such a joy to get to talk to you, Heather, and to be hosted by Mysterious Galaxy, which I one day want to visit so badly. But today we're doing it like this. So.
Yes. And it's so wonderful to talk to you too. I got to read your book, an advanced copy of it. And honestly, it's been, I don't know about you, but it's been really difficult for me to read during the pandemic. Like, it's just been hard for me to focus because, I mean, part of it is, juggling the day job and then the writing. And then it's like when you finally sit down to read, you almost just wish the book would just like zoom into your brain, like fully read.
I was going to say, you wish it would read itself to you, but that's audiobooks. But even audiobooks are really difficult sometimes.
Yes, I'm audiobook queen. But your book was one that I was really looking forward to reading every single day. Like I'd pick it up and I got through it, and all the characters, and I wrote in my blurb that it's my favorite kind of story because it's like love and betrayal are the same thing in your book, and that is just like, I love that so much. So in case we have people watching who don't know anything about your book, I don't know why they're here, but maybe they are. Can you talk about it just a little bit for us before we go into more depth?
Yeah, of course. So this is the book. It's backwards because I still have, we're 2 years into this and I have yet to figure out how to flip my camera. It is about two siblings who help their father rule this small kind of unstable country. And they are both, they both have control over certain elements of the world around them, whether that's helping control the seasons or the tides or things like that. And one day they are kind of put in a situation where they are forced to consider whether their father's rule is a good thing, whether they're complicit in it, and what kind of people it has made them into. And they end up kind of going their own ways and ultimately facing off against each other. And yeah, it's set in a world that is kind of based off of 15th, 16th century Greece, when it was during Ottoman rule. So kind of a once powerful nation, both the subjugated and the subjugator, and that kind of mix of cultures there. So that's the gist of the book. There's also a horse in it that I love. I was a horse girl when I was 12, so it was a huge joy to put a horse in a book that survives the whole thing. It was a great time for me.
I feel like in every author, and I'm noticing this the more books I read, we either all have horses or we all have libraries, and most of us have both.
Yeah, no, I got to put a library in the sequel, and I was like, I'm doing it finally.
Yes. I have a library. So you talked, one thing that you touched on already, that I love most about your book is how all of the siblings in the book, they're all just so morally gray. Every character has their own agenda. Every character has their own plan. It is just a morally gray paradise in that book. But for you as an author, was it a challenge to write what's basically a cast of villains And would you even call them villains?
I I have trouble with the concept of villains. Just like in the work that I've done so far, it's something that I've had trouble pinning down. I remember for my first book, I turned in like one of the first drafts, and my editor was like, "Okay, but who's the villain?" And I was like, "The injustice of it all. That's the villain in the story. Like the injustice. Oh, like the bad vibes. Those are the villains." And she was like, "No, no, but I meant like a person. Like who? Which person is it?" So I like struggle to, or rather, I don't necessarily find it useful to think of characters in that way. I think they're all like all four of the siblings are horrible. They're like such little shitheads, but they are, I don't know that I would call them, I think villains implies a judgment. And I think what's important when you're writing a morally gray character is to come at it with no judgment and because if you do, then you're not actually letting them behave the way that they're going to behave. So they suck, but I don't know that I would call them villains, or at least I don't know that that's how they function in the book. Does that make sense?
No, it absolutely does. And I can tell you from writing my sequel, I wrote my main character is a villain. And in book 2, I feel like a lot of the problems that I was facing came because I was imposing my own judgment on her. Like, oh, like what you did at the end of the book was bad. And so in book 2, you should be feeling bad about what you did and guilty and punishing yourself. And I kept hitting this wall with writing her with book 2 because it was exactly what you described, where it was my own judgment not letting her behave the way that she was going to behave. And then once I took that wall off and let her just be, it was a lot easier.
And like that
So,
judgment will
makes
probably
total
live
sense.
somewhere in the book, but it doesn't have to live like in that character themselves as they're doing everything.
Yes, just let them be. Let them do what they want. We also talked about, you touched briefly on your inspirations for the world that exists in A Garden Burning Gold, the Ottoman Empire, Greece. But another thing that exists in your world, and both of our books, is queerness. And so what challenges did you face when putting queerness into your book? I feel like for me personally, when I read In a Garden Burning Gold, it was pretty seamless into the world building. So was that easy to just kind of like remove these modern restraints that sometimes we see? Was it challenging for you? Like, how did you navigate that?
Some of it was like as simple as just making sure that I'm not using, or I'm avoiding when possible, gender specific terms like wife and husband. I didn't really, I tried not to use. And like you get into tricky bits because I still use marriage. So there's still the concept of marriage, but this is where I get in the weeds with myself, where like I overthink things where I'm like, I can't use the word heavenly. I can't say like, oh, the food was heavenly because there's no heaven.
Right.
But also I have people who are calling themselves saints. So where's that? So I just have to like, at some point, I think you have to just be like, it's a fake book. I'm going to go with it. So yeah.
Don't take yourself too seriously.
Well, and this is like, I had trouble kind of working up the nerve to actually use the word bisexual. Cause I was like, how would she have that framework? Would she even think to identify that way? Like, and I ended up going with no, she wouldn't, but she would note what she prefers in other ways. So I get really in the weeds on like the linguistic level. But it's really, that's where it's difficult for me in terms of the decision making, like on an upper level. It seemed really simple to me. But it's like the nitty gritty where I'm like, wait, I can't say that they parked the carriage because parked, does that come from cars or like I get that way. But what about you?
Yeah,
I'm curious how you handled it, because this is my first time writing queerness in this like second world that's totally removed from the frameworks that we already have.
So for me, I intentionally went into Malice wanting to create a world where any kind of queerness was absolutely normal. I felt like there were so many stories where queerness is considered wrong or is, sometimes vilified, or there are all of these obstacles. And my characters, absolutely, Alice and Aurora, have obstacles in being with each other, but I intentionally made those obstacles of Alice is considered this villain in the world that she's in, and Aurora is the hero, she's the princess. And so that is the obstacle between them.
Yeah.
But queerness itself, I was just like, we're not going to make this, you know, taboo within the world that it is, because there is a story in the book about a different country where it's definitely not okay and something really bad happens because of that. But in Briar itself, I tried to intentionally, you know, put in same-sex couples who kind of like are bi or queer, however they identify. And yeah, so I was just like, we need more of this. Like, we need more of this in fantasy. And I do feel like we're seeing a lot more of it.
Oh, a lot. Yeah.
Coming up. Yeah.
For sure.
Which is very, very encouraging. I forget what I read recently, but it was very, very
well, that's the thing, isn't it? As soon as you're like, I read every book, disappears immediately.
Oh man, yes. So I like that when you were talking about your bisexual character, that's Rhea. Yeah, did I say her name right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I loved Rhea because one thing that I loved about Rhea is that she is this woman who, even though she's part of this like super duper powerful family, she is literally responsible for the changing of the seasons, feels so trapped in her circumstances. Like the one scene about Rhea that I remember so vividly is when, I can't spoil it, never mind.
You have to give me a hint for later.
For later, she decides to do something that she knows she is not supposed to do, and she's basically like frozen with fear, thinking about what decision that she's going to make. And I was reading it going, you are so powerful, like you can do this, you can make this choice, you can do whatever you want to do. But she doesn't feel like she can. So can you talk a little more about Rhea and about like the role of women in your novel and how you wanted to portray her, etc.?
Yeah, I think I in my YA work, I've written a lot about like specifically the ways in which women their physicality is kind of perceived, especially as like a teenager, right? And so for this book, I didn't go into it really thinking like I want to write about like being a woman in a power structure, but that ended up coming out a lot anyway. And so I think because you have Rhea and then you have her twin brother Lexos, and they both like technically occupy a really similar status level. But what has always interested me about siblings in general is the idea that you have two, three, whatever, four people who live in the same house, have the same parents, go through the same things, but come out so differently. And I imagine one of the things that creates those differences is a person's experience of their own gender. And so I felt like Rhea has so much power, knows that she is powerful, but she feels so beholden to her father. And I was really interested in this book and like what happens when you take the father or the powerful figure out of the equation, because the dad is in the book for like 60 pages if you put them all together. Like he's not actually around that much. And what
He's
I was
also such a presence.
I wanted you to like feel him, but have it be that like, what is it like when you are an adult and you come from a setting, or, you know, a family like this? What kind of person does it make you, and how do you carry that with you when you're by yourself, when you're making what are ostensibly your own choices? And I think what Rhea finds is that it's very difficult to make any choices that are really your own when you haven't worked through like the cloud that's hovering over you. She's trying, I would say she's trying her best, but I don't know if that's actually true. She's got a very like easy life in certain ways. And I think you can see that in her, where she's like looking for the easiest way to move into a new phase.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know though. I loved her. I have such high hopes for her in book 2. Like she was easily one of my favorites, which kind of like leads me in. Yes. leads me into another question about your characters. One thing when my book Malice came out that really kind of amazed me, because the ending is a little bit on the divisive side, but actually no, I thought the ending was going to be divisive. But what has really surprised me is how much my audience rooted for my main character Alice at the end of the novel, even though she did some like really bad stuff. And it's like I was surprised, I think, at how much the readers were able to kind of overlook the consequences in what she actually did, because they felt like they really liked this character and they kind of like didn't care. They were willing to excuse a lot. So have you found this to be true? And which of, I mean, obviously I'm rooting for Rhea. So if you had, who do you think your readers might root for? Who are you rooting for as well?
Well, there are 4 siblings. There are the 2 oldest twins, Lexus and Rhea. There's the middle son, Nitsos, and then there's the youngest daughter, Chrysanthi. And I am a youngest daughter myself, so I am rooting for Chrysanthi. She is the best. She is perfect. She's
amazing
to win the entire thing because she's the youngest, and that's just how youngest are. So I'm rooting for her, but I think rooting is a really interesting word too, because like when I say that, does that mean that I am hoping that she will be successful? Not necessarily, I don't think. Like for Rhea and Lexus, I'm rooting for them to like almost come up with consequences of the things that they've done, and whether or not they get through that in a good way or a bad way, like remains to be seen. So I think, I don't know that I'm necessarily rooting for any of them to like be the next king in that like Game of Thrones kind of way.
Yeah, Game of
because
Thrones
I feel like they would all be terrible. Oh my God, they would all be so bad. But I do hope that even though I'm not always committed to making people like a character, I am always committed to making you want to at least see what happens next to them. And so Rhea and Lexus definitely still keep that spot, but there's Chrysanthi in the back, and she's just on a different level. Like she's on a different playing field. She's just on a different level.
Yeah. I mean, I loved her too. Absolutely. I think maybe that's fun that you root for her because I'm the oldest, and so I'm
there you go.
Like,
yeah.
no,
it's the youngest, man.
Yes. So what you kind of touched on earlier, and even in answering this last question, is how much the characters really do like betray each other. They have their own agendas. I, as a reader, never really knew like what was coming next, like who was like how this was going to end. I still obviously don't know how this is going to end. There's a lot still up in the air. As an author, I know how difficult that must have been for you to plot and to keep up with. So did you have it in your head how this was going to go? Or I've heard authors talk about how they keep secrets from themselves to try to make the plot a little more exciting, to try to keep things from being obvious. Like, were you I know how this is going to go as soon as I write it or I think of it, or did you try to keep some secrets from yourself as well?
I didn't know anything really. And part of it was, I think, the way that I wrote this book. I wrote it kind of in between other projects. So I would do like 20 or 30,000 words at a time and then set it aside for a while. So it was hard to like really plan in the big sense before I could come back. But I'm also like having to accept, the more I do this job, that I don't like to know what's going to happen. And it's like, I like the idea of being organized, and I like to like start a spreadsheet, like don't like to fill it out. And it's like, it's a bummer. I wish I were that kind of writer. But I'm not. So I'll figure out like big tent poles, or not tent poles, like I think of it kind of like power lines, and you can see the next post. I'm like waving my hand in front of the camera, sorry. But you don't know how you're going to string along to the next post. So that kind of thing, where it's like a very, very bare outline, but I'll get there eventually. But in terms of like the last 10-15% of the book, I had no idea. I was getting to the end and I was like, oh. like, what's going to happen? Something, or maybe I'll just end the book here.
Something has to happen. Oh, I feel you on that. Yeah, that's impressive though. I am genuinely impressed by that.
Well, and then you have to like, then that's what revision is for, right? And you go back and you're like, okay, if I want this to happen, then I'll seed in all that, all the other stuff.
Yes.
And hopefully it'll make me look a little smarter than I am.
No, you look brilliant. Like the book reads like brilliantly, seamless. So you don't need to worry about that. You just keep doing things the way you're doing them.
I'm so brilliant. That's the takeaway here. We can all go home now.
Yes, that is the takeaway. Rory's brilliant, immensely talented. Discussion over. Take no questions.
Exactly.
But this is your first adult novel. How was that genre switch for you? You said you were writing in between projects. Was there things that you know that you enjoyed more, enjoyed less?
What I mean, part of it is just like very basic differences, like third person versus first, or like the length of the book. Like I knew from the outset that an adult fantasy book was going to be a different endeavor for me than my YA. Like they're almost twice, this one's almost twice the length of the other ones, which are down there somewhere. And like other little things where I use a lot of scene breaks in my YA, like really kind of quick scene breaks to kind of keep the pace moving and also to create a more fragmented experience of things. And I don't know why, but for some reason on like the third page of my first draft of the adult book, I was like, I'm not going to use any scene breaks in the whole book, which was, it made it, I don't know why I did that, but then of course I said that and now I have to, like, I had to follow through. So there are no scene breaks. Yeah. And it's like, I think all of that is kind of part and parcel of a larger, like a sense of more perspective that I wanted to give. Like what I love about YA and about writing YA is the immediacy of it and how it's meant to be like, this is what I'm going through right now. Like I am a teenager. This is the biggest anything has ever been for me. And so what I wanted for this book was a little more of that, like not remove, but just a sense of like, you might not always be right. Like, even on like just a technical level, I tried to use a couple more like filtering words here and there. So there's a few more seams and felt likes than I might let slide in my YA, but I just wanted you to like every so often raise an eyebrow about the way like Rhea or Lexus is telling you something happens. Like it seems like somebody feels this way and you're like, seems to you. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it actually did, but that's what it seems like to you.
And it's book one of a duology. Am I remembering that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So both of us then have written sequels. Are you done with book two?
I turned in a first draft. Okay. I don't know how with my YA work, I've had it where like by the time I'm finished with a book, the first draft is gone completely. So I don't know like how much will still be there, but I really liked what I turned in. It was fun. It was long. It was way too long, but it exists now at least.
Yeah. Was that your biggest challenge, the length, or did you have more?
It was like, I feel like it's a stamina thing sometimes where you're like, oh my God, I've been looking at these same characters for like 160,000 words. I'm done with them. Like I want to do something else, but the book's not finished. So that was,
right.
I hadn't really run into that before. Like Wilder Girls was like 80,000 words at its longest. And I think we cut it down. And so I got to the end and was like, oh, we're done. Like, okay.
Yep.
So that was one of the challenges that I found was just like the sheer length of it. But what about you? Because I know you are like done with yours, right?
Yes.
Yes, because it comes out in like 5 weeks.
Let me give you a little bit of a breakdown of my schedule. I do not think this will be you. Like I said, let me preface this with I went into the book first Malice sold, and when Malice sold, I thought it was kind of a standalone. And then in my editor and our phone call was like, we're gonna need a second book. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, that's a problem for future Heather. La la la.
Right, sure. It sounds good.
Yeah, she can think of that. She can do anything. And so when I wrote it, I faced a couple of problems, and I'm very curious if you've faced some of these same problems. First, everybody really liked my main character in Malice. And so I was getting I was kind of immersing myself in this fan love, which is great. And I'm so grateful for it because I really wasn't sure how this book was going to go.
Mhm.
And as wonderful it was to have people love your main character, when you owe them a sequel, it's kind of like you start hearing all this chatter of, I want this to happen, I want that to happen, I want the character to be this, I want the character to be that. And I was not very good. I mean, Malice was my debut, so I was not very good about turning that off.
Oh yeah, no, it's impossible.
And so,
like,
yeah, right. Like, and so I had all of that, and then I had, the pressure of just writing a good book in general, wanting to give readers the sequel that they deserved. And so I went in with a lot of self-imposed pressure.
mhm.
And am I frozen? Let me ask that.
I can see you.
You can see me? Okay, I'm frozen on my screen. I'm not sure, but that's okay.
There's like a
if you can
little
see me
lag,
good,
but I
just
think
like,
you're good. If someone's having
okay, so yell at me
yes. In the chat, it says,
okay,
we can
if
see
I,
and hear you, Heather.
perfect. Okay, so just yell at me if you translate. So I went in with all of those, self-imposed pressures on it. I wrote the first draft. It was due in the fall, and I turned it in, and then editor came back, and I had like a 10-page single-space edit letter. And I was like, okay, it's fine. I can do this. And so I went back at it again. But again, like I had not yet removed that, like my own judgment on my character. I had not removed like what other people wanted. And so a couple months later, she got back to me with another 10-page single space edit letter.
I've been there too.
In which I was, yeah. And it was kind of coupled with, okay, let's have a phone call about this. But that was me. I'm not like trying to be like, oh, my editor said that, then we had to talk about it. No, that was like the best phone call ever. But then it was also like, okay, we need this book in like 3 months, and it was a complete rewrite.
Okay.
So it was, it ate my lunch. I cried. I joked to my editors that I prayed to the gods who answer after dark, which is an Addie LaRue reference. If you've not read that, but finally, I finally got there. And part of me wonders, because I am struggling with my next series a little bit of still finding that voice. Part of me wonders if, do I need to be up against that wall in order to produce anything?
Hopefully not.
Because I really hate it. But yeah, the sequel really, really, really threw me, definitely. So if you loved what you turned in, but I will say too, the 2 drafts that I turned in, and these were like you were talking about, not quite 116, but 116, 120. These drafts that I turned in, there was always a little voice in my head that was telling me something's not right with it. But I ignored it. So if you loved what you turned in, I feel like you're in really good shape. I do.
I don't know. We'll see. I have learned my lesson over the years. I'm counting on nothing. It's just, it exists for right now. We're going to see if it exists tomorrow.
I wrote it. I did write it. It exists in the world. But
sorry about my cat's ass just hanging out right there. No. She would not be denied.
You called it. You said that he was just waiting until the right moment to show up. Mm-hmm. We do love the cat.
I can't show her to you now, Rosie. No, she's all right. No, I'll try.
Anyway. Speaking of sequels, though, not aside from like the actual writing of the books, clues about the sequel? Any kind of clues you want to give, or not? You could just be like,
sure, sure. There are some new points of view. So the first book is just the twins, just Rhea and Lexos, and if everything stays the way it is, you will get 3 new points of view, and you'll keep Rhea and Lexos too. But 3, basically, I got to the end of the first one and was like, if I don't give Chrysanthi a point of view, I'm going to be upset. And also, I feel like the spirit of youngest children everywhere will be upset with me.
I was going to say young Rory. It's going to come.
I know.
Get you in your sleep.
So it does feel a lot like Chrysanthi's book. Like she waited in the wings long enough, and now she's like, okay, it's my turn.
I'm excited.
Yeah, no, it was fun. I got to like visit some new places in new like different countries that they don't get explored in the first book. I got to write more about linguistics, which I always like, because I'm always wondering like, okay, wait, so which countries are speaking which language, and did they originate from the same language, and like what does that mean with dialects, and how's it changed over time, and do we decline our nouns or not? So I got to write more about that, which is super cool.
It's awesome. So it sounds good. I can't wait. I can't wait for Chrysanthi's book. Like that's gonna be great, because she was always the one who was kind of there, observing everything. She had her opinions.
Right. She's taking notes. She was like, I see what's going on.
Yes. She is taking notes. So I cannot wait to read those notes in book 2. I guess the last question that I really have is if you have any like Easter eggs in your book. Like people love this, like Easter eggs or any funny stories about writing the book. You said you had one, so I'm excited.
I do. Well, so there's a couple stuff that's like they're Easter eggs, but they're kind of like Easter eggs for like my family, where they're references to like food that we really love, Greek food that we really love that maybe you don't necessarily see in a lot of fiction. Like fasolakia is one of my favorite Greek dishes, and it's like green beans and tomato sauce, basically, which is like not everybody's favorite, but I love it.
Yeah, sounds like a very tasty.
And then there's also Nitsos's name is kind of a joke and an Easter egg, because he is named after a relative of mine who I spent my whole life until like a year ago thinking, I thought he was named Nitsos with an N, but he was called Mitsos with an M, as in Michael. So I was like, I'm just going to use like the name anyway. My whole life. And like, he spoke only Greek.
Did you find out
I don't speak much Greek. About it? No. And like, we just like, that's the thing with a language barrier like that. It was like, why we would never have had occasion to be like, what are you saying, an N or an M? But so that was on me. That's my bad.
That's funny.
What about you, though? I think you mentioned that you had a fun one.
Yes, I do. I had one that I still laugh about it, because so if you've read Malice, which you've not, that's totally fine. Anybody watching or whatever, there's a character in the book called Cal, but his original name was Ren. And if you don't know anything about Ren/Cal, he like lives in this tower, and he's like bound by shadow, and he's kind of a sketch guy. Very broody. And so when Malice sold and I was getting my first edit letters, my editor, who is the editor of Del Rey, or in Del Rey, works for Del Rey. And if you don't know this, both Rory and I are published by Del Rey, and they also publish a lot of like Star Wars books, like the original Star Wars books publishers. And so like there are a bunch of Star Wars nerds over there, which I am not. And so and that's fine. Like if you are, you're not, whatever. But so they asked me, did you name this character after Kylo Ren? Because it seems kind of like a very Kylo Ren type character. And so I had to like email Del Rey, publisher of the Star Wars books, back and be like, I don't know who Kylo Ren is. So like I remember Googling him, like actually had to Google. I had never seen Adam Driver knowingly in Kylo Ren costume. And as soon as I Googled Kylo Ren and he popped up on my Google images, I was like, oh, I wrote Kylo Ren.
It happens to the best of us. I mean,
whoops. So we had to change his name. But yeah, now every time I see Kylo Ren, I'm just like, ah. And then Del Rey of all people, right?
Right.
Yes. Yeah. So whoops. So I guess we're rolling up on the 40-minute mark, which means we get to open up for questions, and we have some questions here. Let's see who we got. Who is the first one? Says who is Scallion's favorite character in the book? I need to know, and that's from Rosie.
That's my cat. Scallion. Hold on, I'm gonna.
Oh, Royer, if you're there, you're on mute.
How's that?
Everything okay over here?
How's that?
Oh yeah, you're all good. Okay,
Okay,
just wanted to pop in and make sure.
I am gonna grab.
There he is.
She wants to say hi. Who is her favorite character?
Herself.
Herself. I was trying to. Someone asked me like, who is she most like? And I'll just. I feel like she's the villain.
Yeah.
We asked who the villain was in the book. It's Scallion.
It's Scallion. That was the most villainous look I think I've ever seen from a cat.
She's
awesome.
She's the worst. She's like a sweetheart, but she is like devious and also like dumb as rocks. So it's
So I have not read your draft at all, but my edit note for you is that Scallion has to be in book 2 somewhere.
I feel like I put a character that like could kind of be her, but I would need to make them dumber. He's a new one.
Okay, new character. Okay, well, you work on that then.
And she always looks like that. Like always. She just always looks so pissed. And I'm like, I did nothing.
Yeah, like she's a nice life. Like let's see. Sarah Faring, I hope it's Faring, wants to know what your favorite scene to write was and why.
I had a couple. I think this is kind of a cheating answer, but I liked a lot of the like small sibling moments that are kind of scattered here and there in places. Like the kind of like in between moments. There's a scene where Alexis has just been on this like big adventure, and then he comes back and he's like, right, all he wants to do is just like collapse in his bed, but his brother's in his room and he's like, get the fuck out of my room. I'm so
yes.
I just wanted to take those like just the sibling stuff where it's like, okay, what would it be like if you have lived with your siblings for 100 years in the same house? You have like no friends and you don't go anywhere. Like, how annoyed would you be with your sibling when you found them in their room? So that, but then I also loved getting to write any scenes with, there's one character, Stavra. She's a secondary character. And she has she just has a fun kind of perspective on things. Like she's been around for a little longer. She knows kind of what's up and what's not. And so when Lexus comes in with like big ideas, she's just like, oh my God, here we go again. But she also is kind of charmed by him. So I liked getting to write scenes with her. And it's a shame she's a member of the family because the family takes up so much time. And I was like, I'm going to come find you someday. Like we'll do more stuff or scenes someday.
I loved her, and I can also say that it shows that you enjoyed writing the sibling moments because the characters really do come across like as siblings. Like they don't just seem like, you know, sometimes you watch a TV show or a movie and it just like it seems like a bunch of random actors thrown together and like you know that they're siblings because they said that they're siblings, but like for you, like this, they really did interact the way you would think that siblings would. Like I have 2 younger brothers, and there were definitely times that I was like, that yes.
I saw walking into the room making a random noise. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
the sibling behavior we're going for.
Yes. It was wonderfully done. Let's see. Another question. The title is fantastic. What was the process of coming up with it, and were there other titles before this one?
There was another title, and I can't remember it exactly, but I think it was like in the shade of the wind-up tree, I think. So it still had that same rhythm. But then I realized that there is, I think it's an Ishiguro book that's the wind-up bird or something. And it was too close. And it was like, okay, let's change it. So we kept the rhythm. And garden, there's like a significant garden in the book. So that felt like a good word. And then I also liked the idea of like something being destroyed but becoming, yes, oh, thank you, Murakami, the Wind Up Bird Chronicle. Thank you. Yeah, so I like the idea of like burning gold becoming more beautiful in its destruction. And then also at one point it was literal and the garden got set on fire, and then my agent like walked me back from it. She was like, what if we don't set it on fire?
But everything has to get set on fire.
My second book is literally called Burn Our Bodies Down, and there's a big fire in that. She was like, you kind of maybe played your fire card already. Just like, don't do that again. So we did it. It had the rhythm that I love. I'm a big rhythm person, so I liked the da 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 da. So
yes, like I mean, it is. I agree. It's a gorgeous title.
Yeah, I haven't titled the second one yet, but we'll have to figure it out.
It's got to have the same rhythm though.
Yeah, exactly. I know.
I can tell you, I walked around my house for weeks because I like it when titles match. And so for Malice, I was like, it has to be inward and it has to be like 2 syllables. So I'm like walking around my house for weeks, like naming all the M words I know.
It fits so well. Yeah.
Yeah. It takes a lot. Let's see. Kelsey Rodkey wants to know what your favorite trope in the book was.
I think it would be, so Rhea ends up having to kind of, the way she controls the seasons is she marries a new person each season, and then to transition into the next season, she kills them, which is like a fun time for everybody, except the person who dies.
Yeah.
So,
I liked it personally.
Right. So she's in the house with her like new consort or whatever, and she eventually has to go and share a bedroom with him. I always love I think it's like the only one bed trope, except there are other
options too. The only one bed trope.
Like only one bed.
Shall we sleep?
But I also love when you get one character exploring like a space that's really personal to another character. So she gets to go in and see her new consorts, like, what stuff does he have on the wall? Like, how is he messy? Is he neat? Does he like empty his pockets before he takes his coat off, or what? Like, just stuff like that. I like that kind of like domestic intimacy and how characters deal with that, maybe like before they're ready for it.
And she hardcore snoops. She's not ashamed.
You have to.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. What's another one? Casey Pitsley wants to know who are your literary influences, and do they change with each book?
Oh, they definitely change. Yeah. For my YA stuff, I've like taken so much, reading from Megan Abbott, Nova Ransuma, Jeff Vandermeer as well. Like I'm gonna be that person and say rhythm again, but like the rhythm of their prose is so specific, and I just really love the way that they pay attention to that. For the adult book, it was more like I got to go back into the kind of like the books that I read and loved when I was like 12. And so I think if you like boiled it down, the base influence would probably be Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan, which is like not necessarily the most.
I just finished watching that on Amazon.
But yeah, it was just so fun for me to be able to like create something more sprawling. And that was like the first reference that I had for that. So I feel like it's under there, under everything.
Yeah. 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 And this next question I love. I'm actually super curious about it too. Was there a scene in the book that got cut out from the final product that you wish had made it in?
I don't know. I feel like I added more than I took out. I think there were a couple scenes with, so Lexos goes on a trip to a new city and he runs into his friend just over there, and they go on kind of like a bros night out. And so there was a scene that was a more dramatized version of that. You get a lot of it like in summary. And so there was a scene that was more played out beat by beat. And I liked that because I like to see Lexos have a bad time. I like to see people make fun of him.
Yeah.
So I do miss that a little bit. But I think if you compared the first and like final drafts, it's more that I added material than took away. Except for
that's always nice.
I'm an underwriter usually. So.
The worst is when it's both. You got to take it all out and you got to put it back in. That's me. This is another good question. What is your author's origin story, and what made you fall in love with writing?
Well, I'd be curious to hear your answer to this too, because I always find that it's so different from person to person.
Yes, that's why I love that question.
I grew up in a home that was like very, very book focused. Like this is actually funny. I just learned like a month ago that my parents watched TV. I didn't know. I thought we didn't watch TV in my house. I thought we only discovered it when I was like 13. Apparently my parents were watching TV this whole time, but like we didn't really do that a lot in my formative years. I read, and my mother's a writer as well. So I got kind of that view of things really early, and it was always like, it always felt like a real thing that people could do, not necessarily me all the time. Like somebody could do it if they wanted. And so I read a lot and kind of wrote when I was a kid and made my teachers read stuff. And then I hit that, like, I'm 15 and I'm rebellious and I don't want to do all these things my parents like, so I'm not going to be a writer. And then I was like 23 and was like, I'll be a writer. I'll try. Okay. But what about you? How did you come to it?
It's actually like, it's funny that you say it's different for everyone, because we have somewhat similar.
Oh, yeah.
The first teacher who ever told me that I was a writer was in 3rd grade, and my response to her was, I don't want to be a writer because it's hard. And that is some wisdom right there.
Already.
It is true. I knew even then. And then I did this thing for 20 years or so where I would want to write and say, okay, I'm going to write. And then I would say, no, I can't. Like, for whatever reason, I did an English degree in undergrad, which, what are you going to do with that? Still ask myself. And then for grad school, I was either going to go to library school or I was going to go get my MFA. And just that practical side of my brain was just like, what's going to pay the bills? What's going to be the job security? And so I went to library school. But I just kept, kind of like what you were talking about, where like, oh, okay, I'm going to be a writer. I just kept circling back to it. And as a librarian, surrounded by stories, reading more than I have ever read in my life, actually, was just like, okay, like I honestly feel like I can do this. And it really like wasn't a quick process for me. The first book I wrote was really bad. I'm sure you can. I tried to query it, didn't take off at all, which no surprises there. But what surprised me personally was the fact that after that first book did not even get a request for read pages, I wrote another one, and then that one didn't sell, and I wrote another one. And so I think I finally got to this point where it was kind of like, okay, I guess I'm in this for the long haul.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Ooh, you kind of answered this one, but I'm curious if there's more. Are there any books, shows, or movies that further inspired the aesthetic of your book? What are they, and what aspects did they inspire? You talked a little bit about Wheel of Time, but is there anything else?
Yeah, on an aesthetic level, I think I took a lot mostly from like historical materials, like Byzantine icons and mosaics and patterns like that, and also just the landscape of northwestern Greece, which is where my family is from. That really played a huge influence for me. I'm a big playlist person when I write, so like I had a playlist and a list of music that I curated. But I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't mention Succession here because I love Succession so much. It's a show on HBO. If you're not familiar, you should be. But I wrote a first draft of this book, and then I think it started airing that spring. And I started watching it and I was like, oh my God, it's about a father and 4 children, and they want to inherit things and they're arguing, and it's about these big things. But at its core, it's like, does my dad love me or not? And it just is my favorite thing.
That's your book.
My favorite thing. They're so good at like doing these kind of like surface level conflicts, but you can see it under everything that it's like not about that at all. I think it's amazing television and I highly recommend it.
It sounds really good. I don't have that one, but I'm gonna look into it. It sounds like really good.
There are 3 seasons. They're gonna film season 4 soon. It was really good.
There's 4 seasons of it? There will be 4 seasons of it?
And they're doing number 4.
Oh. I love me some like long series that I can like get into. Let's see. I think we have time for a couple more.
Yeah.
So this question is from Selena, and she asks, what kind of character development is there throughout the book? And Selena, I'm like gonna try to interpret this a little bit. I'm thinking maybe like she's wondering like kind of what you wanted for your character development and like the sort of arcs that you were kind of going for, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like there's kind of a tragic element to the book, and certainly to the series as a whole, if the sequel holds the way that it is right now. I kind of wanted it to be like a classic Greek tragedy in a way.
Yeah, so I can totally see that. Like,
I wanted
that's what you want.
It's almost like they're half arcs at the moment. Like you get these kids like breaking away from their father and realizing things about themselves. But I'm really interested in like whether they're true or not, if that makes sense. Like it's so interesting when we like, as people are like, I've changed so much in the last year, you don't even know. And then like something bad happens or something hard happens and you're like, oh, actually, I am still the same exact person. And I am
exactly the person I was.
Right. The same things, like these comfort things that aren't like good for me. And yeah, Selena, you're saying the relationship between the siblings and how much the conflict affects their relationship. That's like such a huge part of the book for me. And like how siblings, how these 2 in particular, these twins can be like, I'm doing this for you. I'm doing this because I love you so, so much. And end up like completely screwing each other over or like doing something that they know the other one isn't going to support, but they're like, it's fine. I'll just figure it out later. So I do think it all comes back to like Succession, which you should watch. It comes back to like these 4 kids at the dinner table with their dad. And they're like, which portion of this setup is my family? Does it include my dad? Does it not? Is it just my twin? Is it all 4 of us? And how do I protect that? And the 2 siblings come up with like very different answers as to what that means for them.
Yeah, they do. I love that. Okay, so this is the one that I'm sure you get asked every single time, but we all want to know. You have to write out of your typical genre, do you co-write with anyone? And what are you writing? Like, are you working? I think this person, sorry, Kelsey Rodkey, I think is trying to ask, what are you working on right now?
I get it. You have to write that. So I think if I were going to write like anything out of my genres, I kind of want to try everything eventually. Like, I think it would be really fun to try to like write a comedy.
Cozy mysteries?
Or like a fun cozy mystery or something with somebody who knows how to do that really well. Jen is saying write a rom-com. I don't think anybody wants to read that is the problem. But I'll write one with Jen. Jen and I can write a rom-com together. As to what I'm working on right now I'm on a break, which is the best.
Very necessary.
Yeah, yes. I'm waiting for notes and also like spinning some ideas around just to see, because some people are really good, I feel like, at keeping ideas going while they're working on something else, and I'm not that person. I need like one thing at a time. So we'll see. What about you? You're working on
what? Yes.
I was gonna say
Del Rey bought my niece.
Actually, no.
No, it's a whole new series. It's with Del Rey again, so it's another adult fantasy, and this one it's another villain book. It is the rise of the evil queen from Snow White, and I mashed it up with the Tudors because honestly, I feel like the Anne Boleyn Mary Tudor story is the evil stepmother, evil queen story.
Yeah, I love that.
I wouldn't be surprised if like Graham was just like watching that happen and like, this is that story. So I've kind of mashed it up with that, but with magic and witches, and we kind of talked before we came on about the difficult struggles and difficulties of starting something completely new, because it's hard enough. We talked about writing a sequel, but when you completely break and you're onto a new thing, it's like the ghosts of your old work kind of follow you into your new work, and it's like trying to make something new but also trying to do what worked in the other one, and it's just a lot.
I think we're time actually.
Yeah, we're getting there. Yes.
Yeah. Hi guys, this was so great. You guys had such a great conversation.
Thank you for having us. I'm sorry about the weird mute. I don't know what's going on with my computer today, but we got back.
Literally, it's fine. It happens all the time. Like it's literally every event we do, there's something that goes wrong. It's okay.
Getting Sally. I'm telling you, she's sitting. You can't see. She's like directly behind the laptop with her little ears.
Oh my gosh, that's so cute. I wish I could see it.
It's cute, but it means that she's gonna do something. She's gonna do bad. We should hurry.
Well, thank you to the both of you, Rory and Heather, for just a wonderful event. I especially loved the way you guys talked about sibling relationships. It was my favorite part because I have a brother, and it was so relatable, and it just shows how real siblings are in just any setting.
Right.
And before we go, I just wanted to ask, where can we find the two of you on social media?
I'm on Instagram at It's Rory Power. I also have a website and a newsletter, but I don't use them, so don't worry about them.
Instagram it is.
I'm Twitter, Insta, and TikTok at Heather R. Walter 5.
Okay.
Tiffany, you were subscribed to my newsletter. I think I sent one out in the last month. That would have been smart of me if I did. Had a book come out, so I hope I did.
Oh, let's hope so.
It was about this book. Oh, great.
Yay. We're all discovering new things about ourselves today.
It's so relatable.
You won't hear from me for another 7 months.
Excellent. Well, thank you to the both of you for such a wonderful event, and a reminder to the audience that you can still go buy the book and some signed book plates from Rory. It's not too late, so go ahead and click on that green button right there, and you can go and get your signed book plate in your book. So thank you again, everyone, and have a great night, day, wherever you are. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Congrats, Rory, on the launch.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
congrats.